Om Sadgurubhyo Namaha. Namaskarams to one and all. My name is Harish Venkateshwaran. We are happy to have all of you gathered here to participate in the Young Researchers Forum hosted by Nrityodaya Mumbai and Center of Excellence, Art and Culture, Shasun Jain College, Chennai. We start on an auspicious note with a prayer song rendered by Ms. Namrata Bharat.
मागे उभा मंगेश पुढे उभा मंगेश मागे उभा मंगेश पुढे उभा मंगेश माझ्याकडे देव माझा पाहतो आहे माझ्याकडे देव माझा पाहतो आहे मागे उभा मंगेश पुढे उभा मंगेश मागे उभा मंगेश पुढे उभा मंगेश जटाजूट माधवरी चंद्रकला श्रीधरी जटाजूट माधवरी जटाजूट माधवरी चंद्रकला श्रीधरी सर्पमाळ रुडी रुडी सर्पमाळ रुडी रुडी चिता भस्म सर्वांगास चिता भस्म सर्वांगास लेपून राही माझ्याकडे देव माझा पाहतो आहे मागे उभा मंगेश पुढे उभा मंगेश मागे उभा मंगेश पुढे उभा मंगेश जन्म जन्मांचा योगी संसारी अनंत भोगी जन्म जन्मांचा योगी जन्म जन्मांचा योगी संसारी अनंत भोगी विरागी की म्हणू भोगी विरागी की म्हणू भोगी शैलसुता संगे गंगा शैलसुता संगे गंगा मस्तकी आहे माझ्याकडे देव माझा पाहतो आहे माझ्याकडे देव माझा पाहतो आहे मागे उभा मंगेश पुढे उभा मंगेश मागे उभा मंगेश पुढे उभा मंगेश.
Thank you, Namrata, for that wonderful rendering. I now request Dr. Jayashree Rajagopalan, Director Nrityodaya, the Academy of Performing Arts, Mumbai, to welcome the gathering. Over to Dr. Jayashree.
Om Sadgurubhyo Namaha. Om Shri Sai Ram. A very warm welcome to all of you to the Young Researchers Forum organized by our institution, Nrityodaya, the Academy of Performing Arts, Mumbai, in association with Sri Shankarlal Sundarbai Shasun Jain College for Women, Chennai. My humble namaskarams to my revered Guru, Padma Bhushan Dr. Padma Subramaniam, for having auspiciously inaugurated the series and for being with us as a pillar of support for every session. Thank you so much, Paduka, and a very sincere welcome to you. We are extremely grateful to Dr. Kumud Kanitkar, a well-known art historian in Maharashtra, for having accepted our invitation to share her expert comments in this session. Ma'am, you have been actually the primary source to understand the historical background and the various other valuable inputs about the Ambarnath temple, which has always been a source of exciting feeling of the architecture and sculpture coming alive, but we could never understand beyond that. Thank you so much for being with us. A very warm welcome to you. And I'm very grateful to you for having guided my daughter, who's the young scholar, Srimati Aishwarya Harish, who would be presenting a paper on the elements of Nati Shastra in the sculptures of Ambarnath temple. Welcome to you, Aishwarya. We are very happy to have with us today Dr. S. Padmavati,
Got it.
Principal Sri Shankarlal Sundarbai Shashun Jain for Women. Ma'am, we are very happy to have you with us today. A very warm welcome to you.
Sound.
Somebody's phone should be muted. This Young Researchers Forum was an idea that came to both of us, Dr. Rajeshri Vasudevan, who heads the Center of Excellence Art and Culture, Shashun College, and our own Nrutyodaya. We came together to create this platform for giving a chance to all the young scholars who have done such worthy, authentic research, who are passionate about our culture. We wanted to give them a platform, and I'm very happy that my guru has blessed this entire initiative, and she's all the time supporting us. This has been designed to be presented twice every month. There is a young scholar who presents her research, and it is validated by an expert who has more inputs to enhance the subject. It's going to be an online, ongoing initiative because we want to make it global. The visibility is global, and we are very happy that we have people joining us from various other parts of the world. A warm welcome again to all of us, all of you who have gathered here. And I would request Dr. Rajeshri to introduce the artists of this evening and welcome them to present their paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jayashree. Satgurubhyo Namaha. My pranams to my Guru, Padma Bhushan Dr. Padma Subramaniam, and all the stalwarts who are listening in. It was said by Abhinav Gupta, the 11th century Shaivite saint philosopher of Kashmir, that even to understand the Leela, the Shiva Leela, or the divine play of the Lord, one has to have his anugraha or grace. And his grace is bestowed in ample measure on our expert for today, Dr. Kumud Kanitkar, who has spent a large part of her life researching on different Shiva temples. An independent researcher in Indology, her research focuses on the medieval temples in Maharashtra, beyond the aesthetic quality of sculptural art, trying to understand the meaning conveyed through the sculptural scheme in an individual temple. She is armed with a PhD in chemistry from the University of Massachusetts, Amherst, 1970, and she's a retired professor of chemistry. Several awards have come her way, most prominent being the Ikoa Hirayama Prize in 2013 by the Institut de France Académie d'Inscription et Belles-Lettres Paris for the book Ambarnath Shivalaya, a monograph on the temple of Shiva at Ambarnath. Several other books are there to her credit. A book in Marathi, followed in 2014, Ambarnath Shivalaya Prabandhika, Ambarnath Yethil Shiva Mandir, a bilingual book on the Bhuleshwar temple near Awadh of Pune-Sholapur Highway, Maharashtra, Bhuleshwar Shivalaya, which was published recently in October 2020. So we can see how scholars like her are ever busy and no pandemic can stop the progress of their great scholarly work. She has numerous articles in research journals and has presented noteworthy scholarly papers at national and international seminars. Her lectures on the following topics are extremely popular: temples in Maharashtra, temple art as a means of non-verbal mass communication, medieval temple sculptures as markers of social history. It is indeed our great privilege and blessing to have such a senior scholar like Dr. Kumud Kanitkar in our midst today. Welcome you, ma'am. We have our young researcher, Srimati Aishwarya Harish, who is a daughter disciple of Dr. Jayesh Rajagopalan, Nrityodaya, Mumbai, and she has finished the Nrityashali course in the 108 Karanas of the Natya Shastra. She is trained in Natvangam and has performed and conducted numerous programs. A graded artist with Doordarshan Kendra, Mumbai, she has participated in the productions of her mother's guru, Dr. Padma Subramaniam. She is a qualified media professional active in radio, television, and documentaries. She has learned Carnatic vocal music from Srimati Vijayalakshmi Nathan and her grandmother, late Srimati Leela Gopalan, especially in Sai Bhajans. Academically, she has a master's in Bharatanatyam from Shastra University Distance Mode, Tanjavur, master's degree in ancient Indian culture, history and archaeology from Mumbai University, and a postgraduate diploma in social communications media from Mumbai. Her awards and recognition include the Director K. Subramanian Endowment Award for standing first at MFA Dance, Shringarmani Award Kalke Kalakar Festival, Sursingar Samsad, Mumbai, the Nritya Shivali at the Shivali Festival, Mumbai. She has performed at prestigious national festivals like the NCPA Mumbai, the IHC Delhi, and others, and also internationally at the Namaste France Festival in 2016 and the Melbourne Trinity Festival in Australia. Her media awards include the Meditech Prize for Best Ad Campaign, Campaign of the Year, Meditech Award for Excellence in Editing and Excellence in Camera Work. Her experience in dance include as a staff member at Nrityodaya, Mumbai, and heads its Tilak Nagar branch. She is a Bharatanatyam teacher at the Green Acres Academy in Chembur and is a guest faculty in the Department of Performing Arts, St. Xavier's College, Mumbai. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Mrs. Aishwarya Harish, and we look forward to a very invigorating and informative session on the elements of the Natya Shastra as seen in the sculptures of the Ambarnath temple. Over to you, Aishwarya. Thank you.
Om Sat Guru Pyo Namaha. My pranams to my Paramaguru, Dr. Padma Subramaniam, my guru and my mother, Dr. Jayashree Rajagopalan, and my mentor, Dr. Rajshri Vasudevan. I thank both the organizers for having given me this opportunity to present my humble research, and I'm absolutely honored to have got this chance to present this paper under the keen observation of Dr. Kumud Kanitkar, who has been the very inspiration for my research work. I begin my paper taking their blessings. The Ambernath temple, built by the Northern Shilaharas between 1024 to 1060 AD, stands as an important landmark in the socio-cultural and political history of Western India. Situated far away from the then Shilahara capital city, Thane, over a period of time, this Shivalaya went into obscurity. Between 1849 to around 1913, there were several attempts made by the British at restoring and maintaining the Ambernath temple. However, it was only in 2013 that Dr. Kumud Kanitkar's monograph on the Ambernath temple came as an eye-opener regarding the raison d'etre of the temple and its agamic connection. This book kindled my curiosity to know more about this temple. As I stood looking at the temple, I felt charged with a rare excitement as I could relate technically to most of the frozen postures. I realized how my training for more than 2 decades in the style of Bharatanatyam, a style evolved by my Paramaguru Dr. Padma Bhushan, Dr. Padma Subramaniam, based on the Marga technique of the Natya Shastra, seemed to create this instant familiarity. As we all know, the Natya Shastra is a compendious work on the art of dramaturgy, ascribed to Bharata Muni. From the time of its creation in the hoary past until a period of around 14th century, the Natya Shastra was fostered as an extremely valuable text that influenced the allied arts of painting, sculpture, poetics, music, dance, drama, and iconography. The great patrons of art and culture in our land understood the need for a place of permanence for such an important work. Thus, we have many literary works, temples, icons, and practitioners who closely followed the precepts of the Natya Shastra to help preserve it for posterity. However, a rapidly changing political milieu resulted in this tradition being forgotten by Indians of the North from around 12th century and those of the South 2 centuries later. Though many a scholar had tried to explore the text, the game changer was the mammoth research work of Dr. Padma Subramaniam. It ensured that Bharata's Natya Shastra as an encyclopedia of dramatic art was now known to the 20th century citizens. Furthermore, it made possible the practical reconstruction and use of its concepts, the most important being the Karanas, to any true practitioner of the art. Bharata says, all art has to be an imitation or anukarana of the world, for the world is the biggest and best drama. But imitation had to be aesthetic, for it had to be beautiful and graceful. This Bharata termed as Anukirtana. The temple walls became the ready canvas to have lifelike images of the gods, goddesses, demons, demigods, etc. Even the most mundane everyday acts of life found place in the sculptural scheme on temple walls, as the temple stood as the most potent place of congregation to fulfill man's needs at different levels. All the figures, divine or human, had to be shown with relevant stances and gestures as prescribed in the Natya Shastra, in keeping with the Talamana and Pramana, that is, symmetry and proportion. The Ambernath temple is significant in the cultural and political history of Maharashtra, as the grandeur of the temple talks of the economic affluence of the Northern Shilaharas at a time when 3 political powers were on a simultaneous decline: the Pratiharas, Palas, and Rashtrakutas. Konkan, lying at the geographical crossroads, saw many a confluence of the north and the south. Research tells us that this temple was part of a Shaiva Siddhanta Agraharam, or a monastic center, and not just a standalone temple, which explains its placement far away from the capital. This proves that the Shilaharas from Chittaraja to Mummuni were religiously inclined towards Shaivism and were ardent patrons of the art, much like their contemporaries in the south, the imperial Choras. Though not intended as a sequential representation of the treatise, this Shaiva Siddhanta edifice exhibits in its sculptures several elements of the Natya Shastra, such as the sthanas, charis, nrittahastas, karanas, aspects of aharya, and sattvika abhinayas. Abhinaya, or the art of communication, according to Bharata Muni, is of 4 types: Angika, Vachika, Aharya, and Sattvika. Angika literally meaning the use of the entire body from head to toe for expressing or communicating something. The major limbs are classified as angas and the minor limbs as upangas, which form the basic alphabets for the Nritta Karana, which are the units of dance movements. It is indeed a great experience as we take a pradakshina of the temple to see an entire band of the Adhisthana or the base of the temple referred to as Narathara, having a continuous stream of human figures come alive with movement. There are several panels of dancers with her instrumentalists on either side, as though eternally entertaining the Lord by making an offering of her art. The Jangha of the Mandovara, which forms the outer wall of the main temple, is embellished with single or dual figures in dance postures, apart from the specific dance movements, angas, upangas, thanas, and certain charis, incorporated in the depiction of the figures in triptych, as also the episodic panels. One can at once identify the Nritta and Natya elements coming through. Apart from the correlations with the Marga or the traditional style as prescribed in the Natya Shastra, there is also a portrayal of some of the local Desi elements. A band of musicians accompanying the dancer or dancers is a concept mentioned in the Natya Shastra. Here in figure 1, you can see that there is a band of musicians among whom there is also a female flute player. Adjacent to this dance frieze is one astounding frieze where we can see the similarities to the Talapushpa Putakarana being performed by the central figure. The slightly raised hip on the right and the arms, though quite weathered now, can still be seen to stop at the level of the hip on the left side. A slight anchita of the head is also seen, as also the Agratala Sanchara Pada on the right foot. I have also put the picture of the Tanjavur temple to show the similarity of the movement. I would just like to show here how this movement is done so that you will know how the sculpture becomes a moment of that movement. So, tam, ta, ta, ka, hin, na, ta, hin, ta, tam, hit, ta, la, push, put, pu, ta. This movement pauses here in the sculpture. Interestingly, a closer look at the panel reveals that there are two more figures behind the central dancer, extremely weathered. Their existence can only be seen through a leg visible between the legs of the flute player and a head visible on the left side of the dancer. These could either be used as a suggestion of animation for the movement of the Karana, which in itself is quite dynamic, or they probably depicted group dancing as Pindi Bandhas. A much less eroded panel of musicians accompanied by a single dancer in the center is seen in figure 3. One of the first things that strikes the eye in this panel is the costume worn by the dancer. There is an upper garment like a small kanchuki, a short blouse, and a lower garment with a long fan in the center. Her foot is in Agratala Sancharaha, where it is placed on the toes and the heel is raised. The right hand is in Rechita Nritta Hasta, which is like this. And the left hand is in Lata Hasta, just left loosely down. Taking cues from the research work of Dr. Padma Subramaniam, this posture could suggest a moment in the movement while performing the Rechita Nikutta Karana. This Karana in the Chidambaram temple Gopuram shows similarity with the current figure. So here, this is how we do this movement on either side. So we can easily see and reconstruct the movement from the sculpture. Among the other musician figures that we see there, we see them standing in the Natam of the Janga, which almost looks like a frozen movement of the Urudritachari. We have them in Samasthana as well as Mandalasthana. When seen in a wider perspective, which is figure 5, with regard to this particular panel, it seems like the performance is being done for the enjoyment of the patron who is seen in a relaxing sitting position, seated on an asana with the attendants sitting around. Dance here is shown as a means of entertainment, along with its ritualistic aspect. That it is a performance probably explains the different type of costume too. I took two karanas to elaborate, but here I just wanted to show the figure 6 that relates to the Nupuram Karana. The similarities in the stance of figure 7, along with the pictures of the Prambadan sculpture down, the first figure that you see down, Dr. Padma's pose in the center, and her reconstruction in the Satara temple points towards either the Akshiptam Karana or the Sambhramtam Karana. So both, I will just show how the Nupuram Karana is performed, where the hand is raised and the leg goes behind this way. So we can easily make out this is the starting position. We could also have it this way. So here is where we could, this is how we could reconstruct certain and correlate certain other movements. The objective to show the vitality and dynamism, even in the tiniest figures, seems to lead the sculptor to use the technique of animation to show the course of a movement. While in figure 8, we can see the animation of the entire movement shown through 3 separate figures on either side of the central deity. Figure 9 shows the use of a visual enhancement technique of having common limbs between 3 figures. In this small frieze within a window niche on the pillar, the central figure assumes a mandala sthana and the side figures seem to stand in Urudruta posture. However, a closer look could also afford a second reading, which points to the depiction of the Shrinkala variety of the Pindibandha, wherein the movement must have been a chain-like movement with the intertwining of the arms and an alternating movements of the ankles, similar to the varieties of Natham of the Janga Beda mentioned in the Natya Shastra. As mentioned before, the single entrance Garbhagriha has images in triptych on the south, east, and north Bhadras. Apart from analyzing them in the background of their theological implications and spiritual fit into the Shaiva tradition, their linked placement and their intrinsic Nishkala aspects brought out through their Sakala forms, it would only be in due diligence to the skill of the master architect and the meditative sculptor to analyze these figures on the basis of their style and form, which create the intended rasa in the mind of any viewer, irrespective of age, gender, or lineage. It is this conformity that regards to the aesthetic concepts in the Natya Shastra, as also the Shilpa Shastras, that makes these sculptures timeless and ageless, albeit their weathering and mutilation at the hands of a heartless few. A single look at the sculptures confirms that the sculptor would certainly have a basic knowledge of dance, which calls for an understanding of the many flexions of the body, transference of weight, and body balance. Taking the forceful aspects first, we come to the magnificent figure of Gajantaka. This is absolutely the most awesome, dynamic, and powerful sculpture in Ambarnath, shown in a complete Vivartitam of the Parshva, which is the turning. There is a Paravritam of the head, combined with the Prasrita of the eyelids and the Ukshepta of the eyebrows, which convey that the figure is looking down in a fierce manner at something which is the demon. Though the arms and the legs are missing, even the vestige of what remains exhibits the intended force. The right leg seems to be stretched, the left leg is bent, assuming the Pratyalidha sthana, identifiable with the finishing of the Unmattam Karana. This way. Allowing the complete twist of the torso as the leg comes down, fiercely trampling the demon. The many lines on the neck and waist to show the extent of force and turn and the dangling of the ornaments towards the left, while the body weight seems to rest on the right, shows the vivacity that the sculptor intends to bring in. The arms must have been easily more than 6, probably 10, taking from the concept of Shaiva Siddhanta, where the Sakala aspect of Maheshwara is depicted with 10 arms. Though only the lower portion of the demon is visible, the canopy of the elephant skin can be seen clearly, thus ascertaining the figure to be that of Gajantaka. Another magnificent sculpture portraying the furious aspect of Devi is the Mahishasuramardhini figure on the north janga of the mandapa. Similar to the Gajantaka image, the Devi is again in a complete Vivartitam of the Parshva, where she's completely turning. But unlike the Pratyalidha position with both feet on the ground, Devi's figure has the left leg bent and the right leg is clearly lifted in Urdhva Janu. This gives the twisted torso an extra element of graceful force, complemented by the Nirbhugnam of the chest, Unnatam of the Parshva on the left, along with a slight Anchitam of the head on the right. Though the hands holding the spear as well as the spear are not to be seen, the starting point of the upper left arm is seen, and the Anchitam of the Bahu increases the ferociousness. This could be hinted to be a midway movement of the Prishta Swastikam Karana or the Apakrantam Karana while doing the Apakranta Chari. The 12-armed Nrittamurti shows Shiva as if lost in dance, with two Bhutaganas looking up in awe. Only 6 arms remain of the 12. The lower right and left seem to come together in a Samputa Samyukta Hasta. Whether holding a bowl or something, it's not clear in the image. The secondary left arm is in a clear Dola Hasta across the chest. This goads one to assume with some certainty that its corresponding right arm would have been in the Abhaya Hasta. The back hands raised in Rechita Nritta Hasta hold the Trishula over the head, with the other hands probably holding the various other Ayudhas. The posture seems to have been a frozen movement of the Alatam Karana as reconstructed by Dr. Padma Subramaniam. This particular figure could have possibly been a precursor to the now commonly known, very popular Nrittamurti of Shiva as Nataraja, popularized by the Choras around the same time period as that of this temple. Another Urdhvajanu movement is clearly seen in the Sukhanasi on top of the southern porch of the Mandapa. In figure 15, we see it's the Veerabhadra panel to the left and the Narasimha panel to the right, both on the Janga of the Mandapa. Though mutilated to a great extent, both the panels can be identified thus due to the existence of their prototypes inside the Mandapa on the pillar frames. There are 16 such figures of the exterior of the temple that have their replicas inside too. This is because the Shilpa texts state that decorations on the inside of the temple must match those on the outside. Both extremely similar in execution, they seem to show the deity in Unmattam Karana, where the lifted leg is wound over the demon and the head is either severed off, as in the case of Veerabhadra, or the head being pulled by the hair, as in the case of Narasimha. The forceful emotion is conveyed through the Nirbhugna Urus and the slight Natam of the Parshva towards the right, with the thigh muscles tightened on the left leg, leaving it absolutely unbent and in the Pratyalidha Sthana. Apart from the forceful movements shown either in the Nrittamurtis or the Samhara Murtis of Shiva, the graceful Sukumara movements of the Surasundaris or Devi also show several dance-like poses which can be clearly identified with the help of the Nati Shastra. Grace and beauty, leeth and charm are what one can use to describe this lady. Shown in the swastika of the leg, with the Valanam of the Uru, it seems that the leg must have just landed in the Akshipta as the pleats are flying with force as though in movement. The Surasundari turns to look back with the Vivartitam of the Parshva in a gracefully relaxed position with a Latahasta and a Mandasmita or a gentle smile on her face. The movement that seems to show landing of Akshipta also suggests the ending of the Valitoruham Karana, inferred from the practical reconstruction of the same by Dr. Padma Subramaniam in her research, where the hands are left loosely down here. Her association with the heavenly beings is shown through the celestial figures above her, depicted with both legs folded as in Vidyut Pranta, showing being in flight. We see this tiny figure over the center sculpture. Along with the elements of Angika Abhinaya, there are also Aharya and Sattvika Abhinayas that are predominantly noticed. We can see here in the first figure towards the left, we see he looks like an Arabic merchant, probably showing that they were also very much present in the local society. We then come down to a sadhaka who's wearing something like a short skirt, but you can make out that this was how the sadhaka was represented. Here we see three of the Surasundaris, and each of their costumes, their jewelry, hairdo gives us so many cues to the aharya. We also see a lovely braid on the center figure. When it comes to Satvika, the emotion that each sculpture brings in, we see the fierceness in the Gajantaka. Just the face of the Gajantaka, even the Yamantaka figure shows so much of force and fierceness on the face. And at the same time, we also see the beautiful smile, the slight natham of the head on the Shiva figure here. So this is how the Satvika Abhinaya is also carried through. Apart from the evident Nritta elements that have already been pointed out in relation to 3 out of the 4 Abhinayas of Natya Shastra, the sculptural panels at Ambarnath also cater to a lot of Natya as delineated in the Natya Shastra. It is thus that we have at Ambarnath a very careful tying up of many mythological Shaiva stories depicted in their dance-like postures, conveying the entire story within the tiny frame on the wall. A look at these panels shows the impact it has had on the aesthetic culture of our society, especially on dancers and artists who continue to use these familiar stances, poses, movements while communicating these stories. As I set forth in my small research of trying to understand the language of these cultures as against the background of the Natya Shastra, it was only more and more humbling and greatly awesome for me to understand that the Natya Shastra had such a pan-Indian appeal. The problems of region, religion, language, or politics had almost no impact over the accepted authority of this incomparable work on theater, dance, music, and allied arts. My study has validated the hypothesis that I set out with, that there must have been a classical style prevalent in Maharashtra. I'm looking for more data on the subject so that this can be firmly established. For this, a comparative study of the Sangeeta Ratnakara and the Natya Shastra is underway. A sense of satisfaction fills me when I realize that my training in Bharatanatyam could help me feel an instant rapport with the sculptures coming alive with dynamism, to speak a language of the ancients. As I further dwelled upon their form with an analytical perspective, I felt their grace permeate my body. Each time I danced and tried out the various movements, I felt an added ounce of perfection in my own practice. It made me realize how and why temples stood as permanent guiding lights for any seeker of knowledge. It almost seemed like they were willing to be witness for the dances that could be performed in the wide prakara of the temple. The art of dance has been and will continue to be a binder across centuries. It is my humble prayer to the Almighty Maheshwara that the optimistic fervor of Nritta offering may lead more and more pilgrims to come and lose themselves in the enveloping fold of the Ambarnath temple. Thank you.
Unmute myself.
Thank you so much, Aishwarya, for
Okay.
very succinct and fairly exhaustive presentation. I now request our expert for the day, Dr. Kumud Kanitkar, to please give her inputs and her observations on Aishwarya's presentation, as also other comments with respect to the Ambarnath temple. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I must start by saying that I'm astounded by what Aishwarya has presented, that after 13 years, I had not noticed any of it. And I feel like she has opened one of the chambers, like at the famous temple in Trivandrum. And it's full of treasures I was not aware of. So I must compliment her. And I'm very happy to be called here. And I must confess that I'm not an expert in the sense to comment on what she has presented. All of that was, I mean, she was the guru and I was the disciple. It's that kind of a thing. But what I wanted to show here was the fact that the Nataraja is a misnomer that is used by rest of us north of the Kaveri or Godavari. But actually that is a misnomer because Natesha is what is portrayed on Ambarnath and not the Nataraja. So I wanted to show you in the presentation. Can we have the presentation? Aishwarya? Okay, so these are the points I wanted to make in today's presentation. One was that Natesha here, whereas Nataraja of the Cholas represented the entirety. That means he was Shiva in all his aspects, and that is why he bears the fire and he stands on an Apasmara Purusha. Whereas here at Ambarnath, Natesha is the equivalent of Aghora in the Panchamukhalinga, that is the 5 gunas. And that is the representation I'm going to tell you. And that was also the reason, perhaps, that Nataraja is shown the fire in his palm. Also it also symbolizes destruction, but it is also because one of the 5 elements that Natesha is associated with is the fire. Natesha and Aghora are on the south, and they are represented by the element of fire. And I'm going to perhaps repeat what Aishwarya has already shown, is a similarity of stances among images. Next, please. Okay, and these are the 2. I think Aishwarya has shown both, and they both, you can see, are do not stand on Apasmara Purusha. They do not, at least perhaps the hand did hold fire at one time, but right now you cannot see them. And next, please. Because a picture is worth 1,000 words, therefore I have put a few slides to sort of complement Aishwarya's Nritya Shastra paper, and how Shaiva Siddhanta concepts are illustrated through the sculptures at Ambarnath temple. So I'm talking about an entirely different aspect. See, both art and literature, actually art, literature, and in art, both Nritya and sculpture are both parts of art, and they represent, they are an attempt to represent what can be called as anubhuti, in the sense that thoughts and feelings and emotions generated in a sensitive, creative mind, and then expressed and preserved in the physical form, as written words by the poets, as sculptures by the sculptor, or as a dance by the dancer. Now, mind you, sculptures are frozen in time. They do not change, they are not dynamic. Therefore, dancer can portray it in a much more lively way, but the sculptures are forever. I mean, they are Achandra, Surya, that kind of life. Now, the Acharyas have used these sculptures to illustrate theological concepts, and the fundamental concept is 5-fold concept of Shiva as Sadashiva. And this initially was the Panchamaha mantras. Then they became associated with Panchamahabhutas also. And the aspects were called Sadyojata, Vamadeva, Tatpurusha, Aghora. And Ishana was supposed to be on the Urdhva and invisible. And this is the description. What I said was that the description, what they conceptualize, they have put in words first. And they describe Sadyojata, Vamadeva, Aghora, etc. And they also associate them with the elements. And you can see Aghora, the third line, Aghora, highlighted, is always on the south. It represents the final destruction, Samhara, and it represents the Teja element. And directionally, they're opposite. Uma Vaktram, and it is also referred to as Vamadeva. It is always on the north. And next, please. Next, please. Okay, and on the south, you have Bhairava. And you can see the Bhairava aspect with fangs, and you can make out that it is Aghora. But the point is, Ambarnath is a place where they show the equivalence, which I have not seen anywhere. Next, please. This is the north Garbhagruha. This is the Ambarnath temple seen from the north. And you can see the central portion goes from the Brahma to Mahakali to, in the upper window, Gavaksha, you can see Chamunda. This is the north one, and the opposite aspect is, this is the south one, where you see Gajantaka at the bottom that Aishwarya has talked about. And then in the Gavaksha, you have Natesha. Now this is the, can you just go back one slide? Because I want to emphasize something. Can you go back a bit? No, north, next one. Next one. Okay, this is the north. This north has, no, this is the south again. Anyway, north and south, I'll show you in the next one, please. This is just a diagram showing you what I was saying. On the left-hand side, you have north, therefore you have Umavaktra, which is associated with Jala. And on the south, you have Bhairava Aghora, which is associated with the Teja element. Next, please. Now here I have shown both the north and the south, the entire Bhadra, with the Janga. On the left-hand side, you have Mahakali on the north, on the Janga, the main part. And in the Gavaksha, you have Chamunda. By contrast, on the south side, you have Gajantaka, clearly Aghora, but on the Gavaksha, you have Natesha. Now this can only happen, it cannot be accidental, it is definitely intended. So in the next slide, next please, you can see the two aspects of the same Vamadeva or Umavaktra. Umavaktra, you can see Mahakali as a representation of Uma, you can see Chamunda as the other representation of Uma. Next, please. Whereas in the South Bhadra, you can see on the Janga, you have Gajantaka, Aghora, but very clearly in the Gavaksha, you have a Natesha. And this is a subtle way of explaining or emphasizing that Natesha and Gajantaka in the Sadashiva concept are the same. And therefore, I keep emphasizing, you should not refer to, I should not refer to these dance images as Nataraja. Nataraja is an entirely different concept. It's an entire representation of Shiva, whereas this is only one of the 5 gunas of Shiva. Next, please. So this is what I'm saying, that two similar and equivalent aspects of Sadashiva representing Teja element and occupying the southern region. And again, I emphasize that Natesha images, none of the Natesha images at Ambarnath include the Apasmara Purusha. Next, please. And this is repeated as if to emphasize this on the Mandapa Karna panels also. I'm not going to, I would like to skip the north part, but on the south, you have alternately a Nritya Murti and a Samhara Murti on 58 and 59. 58 is Nritya Murti, 59 is Samhara Murti, and both are unfortunately damaged. But luckily, the other part, which is 68 and 69, show Nritya Murti and Yamantaka very clearly. Next, please. And also on the friezes in the Mandapa, sorry. Okay, on the southeast Karna, you have, on the left, you have, this is Veerabhadra executing Daksha. Now, these are the simple things that are always stressed. There is his wife lamenting at the bottom. You can see on the left, you can see the wife lamenting. And on the right side is a Natesha. And the only thing we know that he is Natesha is because we can see the drummer who is intact. Rest of the image is very sadly mutilated. But the next please. The combination is very clear of the Samhara Murti in the form of Yamantaka and Nritya Murti in the, I had identified it as Bhujanga Lalita based on the, but now I will change it to whatever Aishwarya has identified it as. And this is, you can see the smile, and you can see the small things that the sculptors emphasize. You can look at the, on the left figure, the dancing figure, look at the ornaments in the ear. 2 ears are 2 different ornaments, because everywhere they try to emphasize the dual aspect, dual nature of Shiva, Saumya and Raudra. Next, please. So therefore, I was, this is again the point I'm making, that Nataraja was the family deity of the Cholas. And Nataraja was in effect considered complete representation of Shiva, complete in all aspects, as much as Sadashiva. So you went directly from the Linga to the Nataraja, whereas whatever is depicted at Ambarnath is different. Next, please. And so I end with the difference between Nataraja and Natesha. You notice no Apasmara Purusha, and only dancers, and different postures. One is the left leg is raised up to the Janu in the Nataraja, whereas here it is the right leg. And this was just something that, next please. Sharada Srinivasan was a Bharatanatyam dancer as well as a nuclear scientist. As she has analyzed the bronzes, and she has shown that the bronzes that are attributed to Cholas were probably earlier started by the Pallavas, and the stone approximation to the Nataraja bronze is actually found in 7th century Pallava cave temple at Siyamangalam. So her comment is important. Executed on a pilaster, it suggests a creative portrayal inspired by a dancer rather than a worshipped icon. Next, please. Now, these are the what to my layman's view look like similar postures. So this is not related to theology at all. And the Pratima Lakshana do not, unfortunately, give the dance karana. They just tell you that so many arms, so many, so many ayudhas and so on. So you can see that this Mahakali as well as this is Chandika, they both have their right foot, right leg raised and the toes pointing down. Similarly, next one, please. Here also the Gavaksha, the Chamunda also has the same, to my eyes, it looks the same posture. It could be different. Next, please. These already Aishwarya has explained. One is Narasimha, the other one is Daksha. Next, please. Ganesha, and to my eyes, the other Nritya Murti seem to have a similar stance. Next, please. And these, of course, are outstanding sculptures. She has already mentioned both. And I will now have to learn from her about Angika and Aharya, etc. But it is nice to know that so many aspects, especially on the Narathara that she has noticed, we had not really looked at, except for a general comment, dancers and musicians. Next, please. So to capitulate, what I have covered is that Natesha and Aghora are seen as equivalent at Ambarnath. Natesha and Nataraja are not synonymous. And Agni held by Nataraja in his hand may be related to the Teja element. And I have just shown similar stances. I have noticed them for the first time after I read about Aishwarya's presentation. So thank you. Okay. Thanks so much. And I've taken a lot of time. And I hope I have contributed something. But I'm very happy to have seen Aishwarya's presentation. And it has, I feel like, you know, the story of the 4 blind men looking at the elephant and one looking at only the leg, one at the trunk, one at the ears. So right now I'm feeling the gaps in my observation about Ambarnath. So like I said, rather than me being the guru, she is the guru. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I think it is your humility which makes you say that you are learning so much from Aishwarya's presentation, because a scholar like you has been the inspiration for her. So thank you so much for your presentation, and so many aspects which were unknown to us have been cleared in this session. A few questions have come in. There are some which are directed to Aishwarya, which I'll ask her first, and then there
Sure.
are some more which are
Sure.
specifically for you, ma'am.
Okay.
The questions for Aishwarya is, the first one is, what was the inspiration for you to relate the sculptures of the Ambarnath temple to the Natya Shastra? I think I'll mention the other two questions also. You can take them in whichever way you wish to answer. The other question is, so many Karanas of Natya Shastra have been identified by you. Did the sculptor know how to perform the Karanas? Okay, so that's the second question. And the third is, do you think the sculptor would have been familiar with the commentaries of the Natya Shastra? So these are the three which have come in for you. So you can start answering them, and then I'll go on to the questions for Kumudna. Thank you.
I think I'll go with the first one. What was my inspiration? And I think I mentioned it in the paper. As a dancer, and more so being very aware of a tradition that was completely very holistic in its sense, which is what is the pedagogy that I've been initiated into. Like I said, the Bharatanatyam style that was evolved by my Parama Guru, Dr. Padma Subramaniam, where she reconstructed the Natya Shastra by observing the sculptures on the temple wall and seeing how they correlated with the text, and then the text was brought alive. And this was a tradition that I have been imbibed with ever since my childhood. So every time we would go to a temple, it would always be a natural process where my mother would explain to me. She would draw our attention to the sculptures on the temple walls, and that is how we've grown up. And this was when we just went for a trip with the family to this temple. It was a very casual trip. And when I went there, that's when it was really instant. There was no other inspiration. It was, I think, my dance just connected me with the sculptures. And every time there were so many things that just came immediately. As soon as you saw the sculpture, some things just struck the eye. And something tells something. I think that's what research is. And I think that's what, as a young researcher, we've always been told, you have to have the passion for research, and that passion comes from within. So there was something that pushed me to go further into understanding what this is, because for me, as a resident of Bombay, frankly, I didn't know of the existence of this temple. It just happened. We were going elsewhere, and it was, we took the car via Ambarnath, and we just happened to reach the temple. So it was everything very much by chance. And something, a 1,000-year-old temple right at my backyard, and literally I didn't know the existence of this temple, the grandeur of its imagery. And moving on to the second question from here, as I went into the research, definitely, I mean, I don't think, like, we're all aware of that story where King Vajra asks Markandeya that he wants to learn the art of sculpting. And then where Markandeya says, from the Vishnu Dharmottara Purana, he says, okay, for that you must learn the art of drawing, and then you must learn the art of painting, then you must know how the stances should be taken, so you must know to dance. For that you must learn music. So it goes on that way. So I don't think any artist of the ancient tradition would have not known of the treatise that gives them the base for all of these arts, which is the Natya Shastra. So any sculptor, if he had to know what exactly, I mean, there may be the Dhyana shlokas in the Shilpa Shastras or wherever, but to know exactly how to bring that imagery in front, reveal it from the stone, he would have the knowledge of the Natya Shastra. And I think it's very evident from the detailing that is given in each of the sculptures with respect to, even when a Vivartitam is done, if he had to give those lines in the particular fashion that it has to be given, he would have known how that pose looked when you turned your head from back to front. So I think most definitely the Natya Shastra would have been very familiar for him. I think I've answered all three.
I think also on the commentaries, whether you can see the influence of any of the commentaries, and whether there are only the Marga aspects, or do you also see certain Deshi elements? I think there's one more question which is coming.
Yeah. So since the topic was elements of the Natya Shastra, I focused on what are the elements of the Natya Shastra that we saw. And I didn't really focus so much on the Desi, but as we have always learned, there will always be a confluence of Marga and Desi, and that is seen very evidently in Ambarnath. Focusing on the dance aspect of it, like I said, the first figure that I had shown, there was a band of musicians. If we would just see the aharya element of those, there is a bandana tied on one of the dancers. So basically, if you a closer look at that image, it shows there are two sticks held in the hand. There are two dancers facing each other. You can see it's pretty weathered, but you can see the stick, and you can see a clear, a very Gujarati dandiya style that we would associate. We could even identify it today. It's prevalent today. So that's one element on aharya. We see the dance. We see a lot of the asanas right below the Narathara, which is more predominantly mentioned in the Sangeeta Ratnakara. So there are those elements also. Sangeeta Ratnakara seems it became popular around the same period. So this is what we can see here. There are also, like I said, the local elements in costume also come from the Arabic, the picture of the merchant that I showed there. And there are also certain, even in the embellishments, I think Kumud ma'am could add on that, because I remember reading that from her research work, where there is the flower, which is a very local flower design. The flower is only found in this region, and that's used in the embellishment motifs. So there is a lot of amalgamation of Desi elements also.
There are a few more which have come in. So you can either choose to answer, or we can ask our expert. One is, could you explain what are the Bhumija type of temples? That is a question which has come in. So I request Kumud ma'am to please answer the question on Bhumija type of temples.
I'll try. Bhumijas it refers specifically to the spire, and instead of a spire going up straight, it is divided into stories, and these are called bhumis. And therefore in Ambarnath, if I do not know if it is possible to show the presentation, but otherwise I would have to explain it just that Bhumija is a special form, which is, I will have to tell you the slide number, right? If you can go to the slide where I showed you, slide number 8. If you can, this is good enough. This is good enough. It's showing the Bhumija. You notice that above the north view, above the Janga, you see on the left-hand side, above the words north view, you can see there is a pillar-like structure with a kuta on top, and there's another pillar-like structure, identical but smaller. So this is the Bhumija plan. That means this would have been, because it is Saptaratha, it would have been Saptabhuma. That means there would have been 7 bhumis like this. Here we can see 2. The third one, only 1 is remaining. So this is just, in short, what a Bhumija spire is. Next question.
What are the similarities? Yeah, what are the similarities between this temple and other Shaiva temples in the region?
I would say they are decorated, like Khidrapur, which is near Kolhapur, is a big Shaiva temple also of the Shilaharas. Aundha Naganath, it is near Hingoli, in the near Vidarbha region. But those have different, the structures are different, and they are not related to, each one has a slightly different orientation, because they are, all these things reflect the regional as well as the time difference. So Aundha Naganath is later, because the Natha Sampradaya had not become that popular until after Ambarnath, which is 1060. Khidrapur is also later than that, although it is a Shilahar, but it is from another branch of Shilahar. And the southern influence is much more pronounced there, although the Shikhar most likely was also Bhumija. But this is only one temple I have seen amongst all the Shiva temples I've seen, where actually the temple itself is used to explain the concepts, like the Garbhagruha, the four corners of the Garbhagruha, the four walls of the Garbhagruha, the four main projections of the Garbhagruha are used to illustrate the four aspects of Sadashiva. And this I did, if I had more time, I would have explained. On the Mandapa also, the same thing happens. Mandapa also has a square set of friezes, and here also, and to compensate, as though to compensate that on the north, they have not portrayed a Vishnu anywhere on the Garbhagruha. In the Mandapa on the north frieze, there are only Vishnus. Whereas, I mean, this is where the Shaiva Siddhanta is explained in detail. So I would say that none of the other Shaiva temples, the three that I mentioned, Ambarnath, Khidrapur, and Aundha Naganath, and of course, the one in the further to the east is the Markandeya Rishi temple, that is at Markandi, which is near Chandrapur. But that also is earlier, and it is a different dynasty, and it has a different time period, and the scheme is totally different. I don't know whether that answers your question.
Yes, ma'am. There is one more question. Why didn't this temple get the attention of some of the other later temples in Maharashtra? Why is there so much of damage which is visible in the temple?
I cannot answer that, but some of the damage is environmental, I think. I mean, I can see the difference. Like, for example, what you see here, it's an old photograph. It is because the British had surveyed it in 1868-69. So I have the photos, I had bought them from British Library. So they show a lot more sculpture than we can see today. But I don't think, because until 1860s when the British went there, the comment of one of the photographers is that you cannot, not a dog is seen around here. I mean, it was so desolate and so isolated. And Henry Cousins said it was located in a pleasant mango grove. And you see nothing left of it now. So I do not know whether it was, I doubt very much if, except for a few faces, like Narasimha face is purposely vandalized, Ganesha face is purposely vandalized, Varaha face is purposely vandalized. So in a way, I think it may be when the Portuguese were here, they were different from the British in their outlook, and perhaps they frowned upon animal images. They thought they were satanic, and maybe this is just a hypothesis, because these are the selected few which have had only the face defaced, I mean, rather destroyed or mutilated. Okay.
There's one last question, and that is, would you call this as a non-dualistic Shaivism or the Shaivism of Shaiva Siddhanta, like that of the South?
This is Shaiva Siddhanta, and non-dualistic is, I think it's beyond my ken to answer, because I know that Nathas worship Shakti Yukta Shiva, so that is definitely non-dualistic. But whether this is non-dualistic or not, I cannot comment. I wouldn't dare to comment until I consulted some references. I think it is non-dualistic somehow. I dare not.
Make it more like the Shaivism of northern India, that is Kashmir, because I think Shaiva Siddhanta follows the dualistic aspect.
Yeah, okay, but it is not, I mean, Shaiva Siddhanta I think it did originate, or more or less what is survived is majority of it is in the south. I don't think anything has survived in the north. Siddhanta, but it was totally replaced, I think, because you are a scholar of Abhinav Gupta. What can I tell you about that? But I would have to sort of abstain. I do not know enough to comment on it.
So those were the questions which came in.
Okay, so Aishwarya can take over.
So if there is anything that Aishwarya would like to add, she can. Or I think it has
Ma'am, I
been,
just wanted to ask the fact that you said that this was amongst the 3 other temples that you had mentioned, the fact that
Yes.
Ambarnath was the only one that showed the aspects of Shiva throughout all the imagery. Was it because it was an agraharam, it was a monastic school? And
I
was
think
probably that
the thing is, any temple has three people most responsible for it. One is, of course, the sponsor who gives the funds it. The other one is the acharya, preceptor, who designs the concept he develops in his mind, which has to fit within the budget, within the land available, and what he wants to portray and what he wants to emphasize. So therefore, that decides. And this North Konkan Shilaharas, where all their inscriptions clearly indicate that they had great respect and they had their Shaiva Siddhantin gurus. Not, I mean, there are references to many of them. And it more or less follows because it started in the southern Konkan branch, which was closer to the Rashtrakuta Empire, which was destroyed. Rashtrakutas were also, they supported this Shaiva Siddhantins. But after their fall, these acharyas, they do need a sponsor or someone to, for their matters and their maintenance. So they were first noticed in the southern Shilahara copper plates of the Shaiva Siddhantas. And then after the southern branch also got absorbed into the 2 other, then it came to the northern Shilaharas. But the southern Kolhapur Shilaharas do not have that much reference to Shaiva Siddhanta. And therefore, this is definitely a reflection of the acharyas who were Shilaharas. Does that answer the question?
yes, I think it has.
yes.
There is one more question for Aishwarya, asked by a Sanskrit scholar. Can you explain the similarity and difference between Bharata's Bhujanga Trasita and Bhujanga Trasta Rechita and Bhujanga Anchita, and Kamika Agama's Bhujanga Trasa, Bhujanga Lalita, and Bhujanga Bhairava? So I think probably at least the Karanas, if you can just show some of the differences, or maybe Dr. Jayashree can also
I think
regarding the Karanas. That is the difference between Bharata's Bhujanga Trasita, Bhujanga Trasta Rechita, and Bhujanga Anjita. I think those 3 probably you can just demonstrate.
I can demonstrate them. So definitely we can see the difference as we see the movement. So Bhujanga Trasita is like this. This is Bhujanga Trasita. Then we have Bhujanga Anchitam, where we have it on the opposite, the hand that comes on the opposite side, the arms being thrown out. This is Bhujanga Anchitam. And Bhujanga Trasta Rechitam, where the hands are on the same side of the leg and they are brought back. These are the 3 movements: Bhujanga Trastam, Bhujanga Anchitam, and Bhujanga Trasta Rechitam. Their correlation to the other Sanskrit texts, I wouldn't really be able to comment, and I would like to ask the experts in the panel if they could add anything to this.
Kumud ma'am, there's a mention about the Kamika Agamas. So would you
Yes.
want to give any input for that?
I'm afraid not, because I was looking at Kamikagamas more for the concepts. And I also wonder, because one of the, what I have identified as Bhujanga Lalita, that was also a name that was suggested by Dr. Vasundhara Filiosa when she was there at Amarnath with me. So it is not quite Bhujanga Trasita, but it is Bhujanga Lalita. I do not know the difference. I really do not.
I think we are done with most of the questions. So if there is anything that either Aishwarya or Dr. Kumud would like to add, or Dr. Jayashree, if we have done with all that, then probably I can go on and propose the vote of thanks. And before which I would also like to announce that we have the next session arranged. We have an expert by name Dr. Rama Devi, and she's the head of the Department of Sanskrit in Sarsunan Jain College for Women. And the young scholar is Dr. Sridhar Vasudevan Iyer, who is going to speak on the Devi worship in India. If there is anything that Dr. Jayashree would like to add, the floor is yours.
I just thought, I just thought, Bhujanga Lalita, there is no Karana as such as Bhujanga Lalita, but when you identify this, it could be as, the Apakranta, the posture that is seen in the sculpture is Apakranta. If you take the Apakranta Karana, and there are, such Karanas as Naga Pasarpita. So those, again, like you would do with Bhujanga Trasita movement and drop it. So these are all, we know all this only because of the reconstruction of my guru, her work, because these Karanas could be, they are associated with the Naga movement. So Bhujanga Lalita, Bhujanga itself means the snake. And so the snake movement itself is so graceful. So I don't know, Bhujanga Lalita is probably one of those terms used in the Agamas, which I have not worked much on that. I have worked on certain aspects of the Agamas pertaining only to color, which was necessary for my Aharya Abhinaya chapters, my thesis. So probably this could be one of those, because many of the Karanas, the Karana names have probably been changed to suit certain aspects of the Agamic concepts. So I feel, when you use the word Bhujanga and Naga, both meaning same, these could be the Karanas that probably could be parallels for those concepts.
Okay, thank you for that input as well. So now that we've come to the close of the session, I take this opportunity to propose the vote of thanks. At the outset, of course, I place deep gratitude to our Guru Padma Bhushan, Dr. Padma Subramaniam, who has been guiding us throughout and encouraging us with her inputs, and very often with her presence as well, despite her very busy schedule. So thank you, Paduka, for that. On behalf of the Center of Excellence, Art and Culture, I would of course like to thank our Secretary, Shri Abhay Shri Shimal Jain, and our Principal, Dr. S. Padmavati, who is with us today, for giving us full support in collaborating with the institution Nrityodaya Academy of Performing Arts, Mumbai, led by Dr. Jayashree. And Nrityodaya Mumbai has been supported very ably by Mr. Ramesh, and many other such well-wishers who, on seeing the good work that is being done by the young researchers, have come forward to not only give us names of scholars, but also to be there present in many of the sessions as well. Of course, our gratitude is very much for our expert for today, Dr. Kumud Kanitkar, whose depth of scholarship is amply shown in her extremely humble and sincere nature. Thank you so much, ma'am. I know you have been extremely busy during the pandemic lockdown and actually completed an entire book, something which many people half your age wouldn't even dream of doing. So despite all the work that you have got on hand, you've been here with us and you have guided Aishwarya and encouraged her. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your presence. I would like to thank Aishwarya Harish also for putting together this presentation. And I think with the blessings of our Guru and her Guru, Dr. Jayashree, it has been an added advantage for her to be not just a researcher, but also a practitioner, because that is what Dr. Padma keeps saying again and again. For any kind of research in the performing arts, it is important to know the practical aspects so that we can know the application, and such a practitioner alone can do full justice to the text as well. So I would say congratulations to Aishwarya for that very good presentation, and wishing you all the best to make it into a full-fledged research thesis as well. I take this opportunity to thank Mr. Harish for being the MC, and our singer Namrita, who's joined in from London, for her very melodious invocation in the beginning, and for Ms. Srividya for helping with the technical aspect of presentation. I thank all our viewers who have tuned in today, and I hope you will all be with us in all our future ventures as well. And please do join us on November 20th in the evening. It will be posted on our on the Nrityodaya page, as also the Center of Excellence Art and Culture page, for the session on Devi worship. So thank you so much, and hope to meet all of you again very soon. Thank you.
Okay.